Handle your hive with Tadioshi. All right, welcome back to the show. Well, and I have a special guest, Adam, and I don't want to butcher this last name. Is it Eskow?
I prefer Eskow, but my family corrects me and says Eskow all the time. But
oh, really?
So either way, it's a win-win.
So now is Eskow? Now I'm going to take a stab. Is it like Polish or what is it?
It's Hungarian.
Hungarian. Okay, I knew it was somewhere in that region. I'm like, okay.
You got it.
So you work on some really interesting stuff. Now, you work on behavior and on these kinds of, especially when it comes to like mindset and attitude, and this is the stuff that everybody who knows me at least in the fitness industry knows that this is like right up my alley. Is stuff I really, really love. So today I wanted you to like tell everybody a little bit about like who may not know you, because I'm kind of new to some of your stuff too, but I really, really got excited hearing some of the stuff that you do. You even have a podcast called the Unspoken Agreements, right?
Yeah.
Now, tell everybody what you do and what your podcast is about and kind of how you focused yourself?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks for having me on. This is really exciting. I know we just got connected, and it's cool to get exposed to you and what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Right now. Oh man, we're all in this together, right?
100%. We are in this together. We're continuing to grow. We're continuing to learn, and that's part of the joy. To answer your question, just to give a brief backstory, because I think it's pertinent to what it is that I do and why I'm so fulfilled and excited to do what I do. So I took the dental road. And I was the 15th person in my family to become a dentist.
Well, congratulations, my friend.
Congratulate me too early.
That's like more than a basketball team of dentists, man.
Starting five, we could put a football field together. Play football, but so I thought I had it all figured out. Actually, when I graduated dental school, I went out and got trained a little bit more, and I met my wife there. She was the 16th person within the family to become a dentist. So like,
you guys are dedicated, man.
Like, we got nothing to talk about. I think about what holidays are like. It's just boring. It's dentistry. And the truth is, I mean, just straight up, I was so into it. I was fully engaged. I mean, you hit the pillow at night when I was going through residency program. This sounds ridiculous, but that's the way it is. I knew what it was like to go to bed and just be like, cannot wait to get up and do this. Like, I want to learn. I want to get this. I want to, I have big dental dreams.
I've never heard that actually in the same sentence. I got big dental dreams. But I believe you.
It was a real thing. I got exposed to this. And then the real shock was when I actually started working as a dentist. I struggled big time. I hit flat. And I didn't know why.
Growing the business? Because I know dentists have, they're pretty much have to start from ground zero. Most of them do. And you kind of have to grow your own business, go practice, and that could be stressful.
Absolutely. It was. And for me, I was lucky enough and chose this. I'm using my words because I know you're a coach. And I chose to work with my father, who was also a periodontist, a gum dentist, a surgeon. And I just had this vision of what I thought practice was going to be. We were going to like high-fiving culture, right? I use that in quotes, like everyone's in it together. And the truth is, like, I felt like I was on an island. I felt like I was by myself. I had to grow the business, which I was expecting, and I did that. And on paper, things looked fine. I was growing. I married my wife. We had our first kid. I'm in a magazine or two, and inside I was struggling. I was struggling so bad. I didn't want to go to work. I felt totally unfulfilled. It affected every part of my being, my physical, emotional, spiritual being, and I didn't know why. I just thought it was me because I'm looking around me. Everyone, my dad's a dentist, my uncle's a dentist, my wife's a dentist. I'm like, they're all freaking really happy. They love what they do. They're really good at it.
Why don't I like what I do?
Like, what happened? And then, so I had to back away. After a few years, it really affected me, affected my relationship with my wife. I wasn't showing up as the father I wanted to be. I was producing, we were making good money, but I was miserable. And so ultimately.
Hold on. What you mean to tell me, Adam, is that money isn't the key to happiness? Apparently not, right?
And you know what? Like, money, I don't know what your thoughts are about this, but like, money wasn't the problem, right? Money, you can make money and do what you want, and that's awesome. But for me, it was not. It was not. Yeah, I could have kept going and made a good living. And I know some people I've talked to are like, how could you possibly give that up? That's so irresponsible of you. And the truth is, I was
Wow.
killing
Oh,
myself, struggling, depressed, miserable. And ultimately, had to back away slowly. I slowly backed away. I did plenty of inner work. Time to go spiritual side. Let's go dig into self help. Like, let's back off because this wasn't working. Ultimately, I realized I didn't want to work with my hands. I just didn't want to work with my hands.
oh.
I didn't really like it. I liked connecting with people. The work wasn't fulfilling for me. And
You know, there is an interesting sort of the more people that I get a chance to work with in my life, and I've worked with a couple thousand easily over the last almost 30 years of coaching people with their bodies and their lives. And it's really interesting. Some people really get a lot of fulfillment out of getting in the dirt, so to speak, getting dirty with their hands, so to speak, getting deeply involved. Other people, and I'm with you, man. I'm more of an academic. I kind of prefer to be, in a book or reading or like, doing writing. Like, writing's my favorite. All that kind of stuff. Like, these are the things that are more, to me, a little more, I could look inwards and I could dig deep and I could really sort of find meaning. And when I'm doing stuff with my hands, this is just me, and this is not a judgment on anybody else, but I feel like I'm wasting my time.
Totally. I'd be curious for you, and this is funny, we're already getting into discussion because we'll get to know each other a little bit. Like, how long did it take you to realize that? I didn't know that for so many years.
Well, our culture tells men that you gotta be a provider, you gotta do these X, Y, and Z, and a lot of messages have to do with us going and doing something physical, like with our hands or whatever, or having this sort of physical prowess that we're supposed to have. And that goes, I think that's a throwback from our hunter-gatherer days, where it made sense that you and I probably should be able to kill shit. But now we don't know how to do that. And so we're sort of right in between this sort of period, and we're biologically still very prehistoric, and yet intellectually we're very civilized and very, forward thinking. And and we're just sort of caught like right behind the biological curve, and it's just we're not working to our advantage in some cases.
That spoke so well. Like, we moved, like, I'm in a new home right now. We moved about 6 weeks ago. And so we're in this like little cool neighborhood out in like nowhereville, like further away from the city, not too far away.
Are you now? Where do you live? Do you live in you live in the East Coast?
East Coast, yeah. You're West Coast, so I'm a little bit outside DC.
Okay. Oh, I used to live in Columbia, Maryland, when I went to graduate school, and I went to American University, or I went to Wesley Theological Seminary right next door to American University on Massachusetts Avenue. So like. My best bud, who I grew up with, he's actually Polish, and he lived in Bethesda with his wife, and so he was going to American University. Just coincidentally, we like grew up together. And then I'm like, "Hey, where are you going to graduate school?" I'm like, "I'm going to American University." "I'm going to Wesley Theological Seminary." Like right next door to each other. It was just like serendipitous, but so I know that area really well. I know.
Awesome. Yeah, I grew up outside of Bethesda, so that's pretty.
Silver Spring, all those are really great areas. This is off topic, but. It sort of always surprised me when I lived in DC and Baltimore area that, in DC, you could literally go like 2 blocks and be in like a rat hole, and then go 2 more blocks and be in like multi-million-dollar homes. Yeah. It's just bizarre to me.
Yeah, Bethesda too. I mean, not Bethesda, Baltimore too.
Baltimore too, yeah. I think it's better now, right? Like they revitalized a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's been almost 10 years, but yeah, I think so. Sure.
I was there when they blew down all those projects.
Oh, really?
I remember watching it from UMAB. My ex-wife was getting her postdoc at UMAB, and we got to sit up at the top of the. It was one of the main admin buildings for University of Maryland at Baltimore, and she's like, it's gonna go off. So we would look out the windows, and you could just see these buildings. It was awesome. I had like courtside seats to like demolishing. I was like, it was pretty cool.
I'm always like, what would that look like just to see the like implode?
And then, but what shocked me was the considerable amount of dust that just shoots out for like a mile. It was like everywhere, but it was pretty cool.
Really cool. So, to your point, because you mentioned something that was really interesting, you're like, society tells us that we have to be a certain way. It kind of naturally does that, right? The messages that are coming down. And so I moved 6 weeks ago, and I'm in this new neighborhood, and there's a lot of young, people here that have kids. Like we have some young kids, and I'm calling myself out when I say this, man. Like every single person around here is mowing their lawn, they're fixing their stuff, and like that's not my shit. That's not my shit. Like,
hey, finally I meet someone who's like a brother to me, man. Like I'm like, I don't do that. Like I mowing lawns and all that stuff. Like,
listen, I want to do the work that I want to do. Like I'm lucky right now. I want to play someone to mow my lawn. Like that is, I'm grateful to be able to do that, serve in that way, and have them do that. And like, look, man, there's gonna be some judgments, and that's okay.
No. Right? Hey, I'm with you on this here. If I could, I don't. There's certain things that I think that I don't enjoy doing. They're just not my cup of tea. They're not my area of expertise, my zone of genius, if you will. They're so things to do with like handyman stuff. Yeah, I'm not gonna be very good at that. I'm gonna burn my house down or something. I'm like, so I'd rather just pay somebody or do an expert. I'm with you on this. I'm with you.
Yeah, fascinating.
But there is a distinct message that we get as men in our culture that says that our behaviors should line up in general to the way that most people believe that would match our responsibilities, providing for a family, protecting the family, all those things. And I'm kind of glad, actually. I'm very glad that it feels like to me, and I'd be interested to get your opinion on this. It feels like to me that today, in this climate today, this political climate and also social climate that we have today, that we are getting to a point where those roles and those responsibilities and roles that we've defined for ourselves as men, women, and so forth are changing to be more inclusive.
That's so well said. I hope so. I mean, that's I think what draws us to speak about what we do and do what we do, and that's what the podcast I speak at. It really challenges these beliefs, either the internal beliefs that we were given from anyone in our environment, or the societal, messages that we're just bombarded with, men, women, any subsect, right? Like, this is so interesting. Just giving another example of, so we're getting in this neighborhood, and look, I'm meeting these people where I'm like, I want to connect with people, like, right? That's kind of my thing. It gives me juice. And I'm meeting them, and I'm noticing the men in the neighborhood. It's like, all right, we're gonna do like this. I'm not gonna jump in yet. Like, let me just put you at Bear's, like on arm's length before we actually go and have a conversation.
Before I could see you, my friend.
Yeah, let me like nod. My wife, day like 3, gets invited over, to hang out with a bunch of the women and the moms in the area, and they're talking deep from the get-go. Like that. I don't know what that is, but they're willing to like break down that emotional barrier.
What I listened to, I think it was Robert Greene. No, it was Malcolm Gladwell on his podcast. He has a wonderful. I love Malcolm Gladwell. He's a great podcast, and he's a wonderful writer. I love his topics, but he talked a little bit on his podcast about some of this toxic masculinity, how it kind of dovetails into some of these ideas, and how there were some studies done fairly recently, and the highest demographic in our population that is at the highest risk for depression and suicide, especially suicide, that those numbers are going way up, are men who are pretty much in our demographic, who are like over 40 to 55, in that tending towards the middle age sort of range, but in that 50 category, like right where I'm at. And it seems like that's the age. And they said, and it's exactly what you described, they said the reason probably why is because that's about the age around 45 to 55. The men are cycling through a marriage potentially, and then when they get to that stage, they've essentially never developed the skills to be able to deeply connect with other men, and only with their partners. So when it comes to women, they can connect with their partners, but not. And it has to do with the way that we feel, that we're enculturated, and the way we feel is okay and acceptable for us to express our feelings. And so most men, they have a very difficult time saying, "Hey man, I love you, man." They always have to add this, "No homo, man." Like that's what we weren't talking about sexuality. I'm just telling you, I love you, man. Like there's this, and they were saying that it really gets in the way of a lot of men in that age group of forming deep connected relationships, and they don't know why.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I'm just thinking, as you shared that so well, by the way, that I could think back at some of my best friends, some of the friends that I had growing up that are like brothers to me, and literally we, up until recently, because I've opened up some doors that I hadn't been willing to go before, we would mostly talk about like sports and nothing substantial. We've developed this amazing relationship over everything surface based because it wasn't, for me, I can only speak for myself, I can make assumptions, but I never felt safe doing it. I didn't really know how to do it, right? So I didn't mentally feel like this was a safe thing to get into, and it was so unknown. Like, what would happen if we started talking about real deep stuff? Like, can I ask you about how you're feeling? Can I share something personal that happened with my wife, or me not looking like, putting yourself on a pedestal?
I like that. I like the way you term that. You said safety, and I would term it as feeling safe in conversations, or safety in conversations. And man, it's really interesting that you bring that up, because it's I think that we're right now, this current generation, the youngest generation coming up, they're so highly offended by so many things, and it's because so many people. I think there's a lot to be said that there's a lot of people that don't feel. I think the way that their sensibilities are easily bruised, and I'm not really, I think it's because most people kind of instinctively want consensus, like that we want. And I'd be interested to hear what you thought, but I think that most people generally, if my idea is worth something, that other people should share it with me. That's kind of the logic, right? Other people should agree. If there's no value, then less people will agree. But really, the truth is, that's not true at all. Because at one point in human history, there were only like a handful of people that believed that the world was round. And so we know that validity doesn't have anything to do with consensus. Has to do, and I think we're all struggling for it. We all want this validation of consensus that says, these ideas that I hold are good for me. Don't you all agree? And it's like, but it really doesn't work that way. I believe that you make the ideas that are special to you, you make those ideas worth something to you by the energy that you invest in them.
Oh man,
That's
freaking brilliant. This is awesome. I just put my hand over my heart because I'm like really vibing what you're saying. I didn't know that. I hadn't picked up on your sense on what was going on with the next generation. That to me, I wasn't aware of.
Well, you could see it. Like you could see it in some of the protests and and just the conversations. And I think a lot of it has to do with this is the first couple of generations who, like my daughter, for instance, who's 11, first couple of generations that grew up who didn't know anything but the internet and social media. This is what they grew up with. This is what has affected their psyche, who they are as people, how they see themselves when they look in the mirror, what they think about themselves when they think of their own potential and their possibilities. And then when somebody strikes against that, that's not something that I think that really has it has a meaningful impact on how they feel about themselves. They can't help it but want to try to take those messages on themselves. And women and little girls are especially, I'm very sensitive to this because I have a daughter, they're especially vulnerable. Studies have shown that in social media studies, that they show that little boys in this age group between 11 and like 15, they're moderately impacted by social media in terms of self-esteem, but girls are deeply impacted. Because when they look at those pictures, when they look at those posts and stuff, they compare themselves to those other ladies, those other girls. Whereas those boys generally don't really do that. They take a very different approach. There's admiration, but it's not the same kind of like, I got to be like that. It's not exactly the same. And I think it has to do with biology. So like women have to be highly competitive for the best genes possible because they have a 12-month gestational period. There's only one baby session coming out a year, and so they have to be selective. So when you think about this from the long term, like humanity as a whole, like we've gotten to this point and our behaviors are the way they are because we formed them because they made sense. And as each age goes, as we start to expand in the way we live and in our sensibilities, we have to upgrade and we have to evolve some of these sensibilities. I'm a firm believer that most everything has to be, for something to be relevant today in terms of philosophically or spiritually, you have to make sure that it's living. In other words, the language has to be alive. Latin is a dead language. Greek is a dead language. They're wonderful to know. But if it's not living, if people aren't using it and adapting it to the current day's needs and responses, then it's a dead language and it doesn't mean a lot. So you have to take all that into consideration when you look at some of the rules and the ideas that we have. But I really, really think that we can that a lot of this we will always go through growing pains because and right now we're expanding so fast. Technology, our connectedness in the world, our ideas. I mean, we're traveling at light speeds compared to what we were socially, what we were 100 years ago, 50 years ago. And so there's like, you and I could like throw out a podcast, reach literally tens of thousands, if not millions of people if we wanted to, and discuss ideas that nobody else is talking about, and literally change the fabric of discussions out there in the world as a whole. That's never been any other time in history. It's never been the case.
First of all, it's freaking cool to hear your passion, man. Big. Like, you know, we're so like, you know, it kind of draws me in. I might have leaned forward in my chair an extra like 10 inches there, just kind of picking up on all the stuff learning. And something you said I thought was especially interesting. You know, just kind of, you said you had a daughter, and then you noticed that women are more, at least in that age group, in the new generation, are more likely to, the word that came to mind is like identify with what it is that they see, and they're affected. You notice that they're affected so much when they're comparing themselves to other women. I think it has a lot to do with the nature of how men and women are enculturated with each other. So like women are a lot more social. It's from the time they're born to the time they die. Like it's expected in most cultures, even in most cultures, that when a woman goes off and marries, then even then she's expected in most cultures to maintain a very strong relationship with her family, with her mother, with her father, and it's just part of it. But men, not so much. Not so much. For sure. Yeah, as a generalization, for sure.
I mean, there are certain cultures that have stronger familial ties that just reinforce that. But in general, most men, like most of the guys I went to college with, I think I talked to my mom maybe once a year.
Yeah.
I mean, I called her like once in a while, but I'm talking about I could count them on two hands how many times I interacted with my mother each year going through college, so to speak, maybe 6-7 times a year at most, and that's not even once a month. But my ex-wife, both my ex-wives and my girlfriends, they talk to them at least once or twice a week. At least once or twice a week. You know, like every weekend, my wife would be on the phone with her mom. I'm like, you know, and that was just normal. But it's because that's what was expected. You know, that's the kind of skills, social skills that they're sort of enculturated to develop. And I think as we get older, women generally become like, my guess is that in your family, if this was the case for both my marriages, that your wife becomes like the social calendar. She's the one that's organizing all the social events, and that's their skill set, right?
She is, and you're right. We're not,
because I suck at it.
The horrible word. It's, by the way, it's kind of great, right? Like we're challenging a lot of. So part of my thing is to challenge what it is I thought I was enculturated with, the unspoken agreements. That's okay. What that is.
So what does that mean? So like, tell me what that means in detail.
So how do your beliefs get formed, right? You get exposed to something. When we're under the age of 7, everything goes straight into our unconscious, right? We don't have a filter before the age of 7. We are like literally a sponge. So everything goes in. So everything you're exposed to from your parents, everything that you're exposed to from your teachers, your coaches, your religious, whoever that is in your world, all those messages, you can't say like, no, I'm not going to believe that. Right. No, that's just in. Like that becomes your hardwiring, your operating system. So the thing is, we go through life after that. We then have a conscious mind that we could say like, so let's say we're like a 10-year-old, a teenager, and we hear something, and it kind of goes against something we learned before the age of 7. Then we're like, no, that's not true because I already know this to be true.
Right.
True. You can't even tell me that's not true unless you like kind of spark the awareness or something really, you experience something with your 5 senses and it says like, okay, well,
gotta rethink this.
Yeah, let me rethink this. Or you get like an emotional impact and you're like, whoa, that definitely isn't true because I know this other thing to be true, and then you form a new reality. So basically, we're living in this unconscious, like we live in an unconscious world until something happens or we step back and we're like, something's not working for me, or you know, I want to step back and like have something I want, a goal that I want to work towards, like you start challenging that and you realize that I realize I'm not even running the show. I honestly wasn't even running the show. The results that I had in my life weren't even because of me. It was because of all of the messaging that you talked about earlier, right? All of that stuff that comes in through society, through the news, through the TV, however I consume it, through the people I grew up in, through my parents. And this isn't a blame
No,
on
no, no.
anyone. Like that's not gonna.
This is just kind of how it works.
This is just how it freaking works.
Right.
So like, if I want something else, I'm gonna have to freaking do some inner work and switch it.
So the way I describe it to a lot of people, because I have some programs that are like transformation programs. These are programs that people who want body transformations, and really it's a life transformation. So the way that I market it, the way that I explain how this program works is that we're not just changing the body. That's the impetus, but we're really, in order to change the body, you have to go in, you have to change what's inside first. Because then if you don't change what's inside, if you don't change thinking or beliefs that are associated with those goals, then you're going to end up get the same kinds of results. You're going to come at your new sort of body with the same behaviors, the same mindset, and so you're going to end up duplicating a lot of the same results, or getting a little push pull all along the way, and never really getting the kind of body or life transformation that you really want. And it is so critical, like you said, to really go inward and to really ask yourself, like, I'm a machine that is operating this way and it's giving me these results and I need to get different results. How do I do that?
This is a machine, man.
That's right.
We're just like, let's be honest for a minute. Like, I'm not even identifying with it, right? This is a body. I get to live in it. This is a mind. Like, I get to use it. It uses me sometimes.
That's right.
Once you understand the machine, then you can, and I use power in like, I use the word power. I know that's a buzzword, but when I say that's really powerful, when you start to actually make choices, conscious choices, that is where our greatest gifts and power really comes from.
Absolutely. I think it was it C.S. Lewis? I forget who said it, but no, it wasn't. It was, I forgot. But he said, it was one of my favorite quotes that I can't remember. I don't know why I'm blanking on the name, but it's live life intentionally. Like that's, it's and I really truly believe this, when we set an intention, like if you set an intention and marry it with a strong positive emotion, that's called motivation. Like it's like the best place to be for the things that you want, like this very expectant sort of a place that you energetically. And I really, I mean, I'm a big believer that there's only two ways to create in this life. You can create by default, where you're just reacting to life and you're maybe doing different things in your life that are producing some things that you want, but it's really reactive. It's not like, and there's intention, where you set an intention and say like when I set the intention to be a professional bodybuilder and to go out there and to do this thing, that was 35 years ago. It took 30 years just to get to that, to actually accomplish that. Like literally it took me 30 years to accomplish that. To move to the next set of whatever I wanted to do, but it wasn't the accomplishment that was the important part. It was the process. It was the labor. So like
when did you start enjoying the process in your journey?
Day one.
Come on now.
Day one, and it was because I was so and in the beginning. I wanted to be a bodybuilder because I was so tiny. I was 97 pounds, literally 97 pounds in high school. I was 15 years old. Yeah, I was not a big kid. I'm Japanese. So I've got this little small frame, and I wasn't even 5'5". I was like, I think I was 5'4". And so I knew right away, like as soon as I saw a magazine in the grocery store, and I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm like, that's me, man. I'm going to do that. Well, all my friends laughed at me. They all laughed. They're like, hey, dude, man, you picked the wrong sport. You should get into golf or swimming or something. You're like, because you're not even they're like, you don't even look anything like this. And I'm like, well, that's why I'm going to start this. Like, I got to do this.
When they laughed, did that leave an emotional imprint on
it fired me up, man. I'm like, okay, I got this. We'll see. Because I knew something deep within me when I looked at those pictures of those guys on those magazine covers. I looked and I knew something inside me told me that I can do that too. Like, what's the difference between them and me? Like, there's no difference. Time and space. That's it.
You knew that at 15.
At 15, I knew it. I mean, I'm like, this is where my life is going to be.
15, when everyone in your world is telling
everyone. I only had one person that was really super supportive, and that was my twin brother. I'm an identical twin brother, and he was like, dude, go for it.
Wow.
But.
How do you make sense of that? Like,
people have asked me this. People ask me like, how did you know right away? And I always stuck to stuff. I've never I never deviated from my diets. I've always, like in the 35 years of bodybuilding, I have missed a grand total of maybe 15 workouts total that wasn't planned time off. So, and it's because I set a standard for myself early on. But I truly believe that the things that we're meant for in this life, like we determine them before we get here. Maybe not the exact details, but we determine like, hey, I want to do this kind of work in this life. And I'm a firm believer in this. I'm
believing in that too. I'm choosing to believe that right now. Until something knocks me off that belief, I'm holding that as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing in my life that told me that I would be good at this, that I should do this. Like everything told me that I shouldn't. Probably. Even my mother at a young age, I remember wanting weights, wanting to start working out, wanting to start to build my body, wanting to play football, at your young age, like 11, 10, 9, and she'd be like, "No, you're just too small. You guys are too small. You're gonna get hurt." My mothers, she didn't want me to get hurt, right? And it wasn't until she got remarried, and my stepfather, who was awesome, he was like, "Damn, let the boy play football." And he bought me my first weights, and when I was 15, and he was the one that like said, "Hey man, no, you go do it, man, go do it." So like he did it. Like,
and do you like, and maybe have you been told this, or do you remember any memories pre 6 years old of wanting to physically express yourself?
That's a good question, man. Because I know all the formative stuff. A lot of these unprocessed things come into us early, and if we don't process some of our experiences in ways that will be beneficial to us, then they manifest in weird ways in our life, like really straight. But I have, when it comes to that area of my life, my career, like this, I didn't really know that's what I was like when I was pre-6. My world was really more about the stuff that I write about today, which is like my memories of my childhood are very loving and very nurturing. I had a single mother that I was raised by until we were in junior high, and my grandmother was really important to me because we lived with her from when we were really young too. So my grandfather was important. So that was, but nothing in there that I could recall. Oh, I remember going to Pee Wee, and I remember my grandfather, bless his heart, he just wanted my brother and I to be baseball players. He wanted us to be, and, American pastime. And he signed us up for Pee Wee. And I remember going every day during the week. And my brother and I would sit there. And my mother would say, she said, "I felt so bad for you boys. You guys would sit there for 20, 30 minutes and cry because you didn't want to go." It's like, and she said, "Finally, I asked you, like, do you guys not want to go to baseball anymore?" And we're like, "I don't want to do this." And so we're like, "Okay, you guys don't have to do it." But now I think to myself, I should have. I'd probably be on ESPN Sports Center right now.
It would have laughed.
Yeah.
That. And that's what I was trying to get. I was curious about that, and I still am. When you're sharing that, it's like,
but
was it the nature, or did
here's what
something?
Here's what I think. Here's what I think it is, because I've asked myself this question, like, why was I? Because I know it was when I saw this sport, and that I instantly knew I could do this, and I instantly knew this is what I'm going to be dedicating my life to. Now, don't ask me what. But if you were to ask me what I was going to be for a living when I was in high school, I would have told you an anesthesiologist, because that's what I was studying. I wanted to be a doctor. I was going to go off and become a physician, focus on anesthesiology, and then do the bodybuilding thing on the side and be, like this professional bodybuilder. I was like, little did I know that, medical school would not have been a great thing. Probably would have been sunk before I started. But I know that I think it was because I was so little. So when I was young, my brother and I were always the shortest. We were always the littlest in our classes and everywhere else. I didn't get picked first for any sports. It used to bug the crap out of me. I used to get into fights because people would try to pick on us, and I was not going to get picked on, man. If you came up to me, I was just going to hit you in the face. I mean, I was a nice kid, but if you picked on me, man, like I did not hesitate. Like this is because I knew what happened next. Like I'm going to be picked on the rest of the year by you and everybody else. And that's not going to happen.
You saw that coming ahead.
Yeah, I was like, nope, not going to happen. I'd rather just get my ass beat. Because you can get beat up, like you get your ass beat, and still no one's going to pick on you if they know that they're in for a fight. They know they're.
You must have loved talking to Brian Levinson.
I did, yeah.
Because we were best friends, and Brian and I were best friends, and we are still today. But he's a lot shorter than I am right now, and he had that mentality.
Oh, really?
He was like, dude, if we're gonna go down, I'm gonna go down and swing.
That's right, man. Hey, it don't hurt that bad. Getting hit don't hurt that bad.
We were like the only people that didn't fight. Like but he fought with everybody, brothers, older
Oh,
brothers,
wow.
and anyway, kind of like what you're saying, man. People didn't want to mess with him. He didn't, he wasn't big, but they didn't want to mess with him.
No, I mean, you don't want to, those scrappy ones, you don't want, those are the rough ones. But I really think that it was that my own insecurity about my size, because I felt like I had value, man. Like I remember this. I felt like and I'm like, the teachers don't give me good grades. There were underlying circumstances. I had to have tubes put in my ears, I had fluid in my ears. I couldn't see very good before I got my glasses. So I didn't realize I had those issues until that one of the teachers later helped us correct it. But up until then, when I was in grade school, I didn't get very good grades. And I was like C, D, and I was like, man, I'm doing all the work like everybody else, and the teacher must not like me. I figured that's what teachers do. They give the students they like the good grades. I'm like 7 years old. Like I don't.
How else did you get?
But once I got it all corrected, because my sixth grade teacher's like, hey, I think you have. She actually told my mother, said, I think you need to probably look at his eyes checked and his ears checked, because I don't think he can hear very good, and I don't think he's seeing things very well. And as soon as we got that corrected, then I was pretty much a straight A student, which is pretty. My brother, the same thing. We both had identical problems, but we are identical twins. So, once we got that corrected, it was like game over. Like then I had school was easy. Like then it was easy because but I definitely think that when I was young, it affected me deeply more than it affected my brother. He did not get affected by his size for whatever reason, and I don't know where that message comes from. But for whatever reason, man, I did not like feeling like the small guy. Like people don't treat you right, and I'm like I didn't like that. So I wanted to be the big guy, and for many years, I pursued that for 30 some odd years, and I got to like 272 pounds, and I was never over 9.5%, 10% body fat, never. So I was a big dude. I was always the biggest guy in the gym. I was always the strongest guy for many years. It was awesome, but it was definitely. I know that it was an attempt by myself to try to cultivate a stronger sense of self-esteem, because I wanted to feel like. So I know that has a lot to do with it. I know it does, because I just don't know exactly where. I can't pinpoint it at a particular event. But I've heard this philosophy that if you track back some of your traumas, your basic traumas from 6 years prior, like I did an NLP thing. Have you ever done NLP?
No, I haven't.
Fucking really cool. They have a really cool thing where they do this. It's like where you move back and forth in time, and you do this. It's called time regression therapy, I think. And it works. Oh my gosh, it's really cool. So I did it with one of my clients is an NLP practitioner. So he's like, we'll do it. So I did it with him, and we find out, he's like, and he's going back 6 years, when you're 6 years old or prior. Like, when is the first time you felt a particular kind of trauma? And we were talking about the greatest traumas, and I didn't know this until we did this. I was like, what came out was, I guess I had some messages around my grandfather's death, because he died when I was 4. And it was like really, I was like, wow, this is cool, man. We can find out shit about myself. So that's what I definitely know that somewhere back there, I think it's just, what was so attractive to bodybuilding was, one, it was a independent sport. I didn't need to rely on a coach. I had already done that in football, and they didn't really want to work with me because I was so small. Like the coach literally let me practice but never played me because he's like, you're too small. But I knew he had to take me on the team. He couldn't refuse me because I was going to the school. And I was good enough to be on the team.
It's just amazing. I mean, you're bringing back all of the reasons, again, that we're not aware of how we make decisions. But what's beautiful about your story that you just shared with me, and thank you, is that you happen to really love bodybuilding. Like maybe it wouldn't have happened if you didn't. Maybe not. You don't really know if it would have happened if all those things didn't happen in your life. Clearly, right now you're buzzed about being a deep thinker and speaking and writing, and like you shared that was like something that you love to do. But it also looks like it's all these other things mix and match into that.
Now, is this what you talk about on your podcast a little bit? Like some of these kinds of sort of things that influence our behaviors?
Yeah. So what I'm really charged about again, it's because of my journey, right? Like where the emotion comes from, as you know, that's what we're going to use to actually move our behavior, make decisions. So for me, I had that very visceral experience with the work I was doing in dentistry. It wasn't happening. And I realized I wasn't involved with any of my decisions. I was doing everything that I thought when I got to the end of the way, I would open the door and this was going to be my life and I was going to be like loving it, and it was freaking way off. And so, what I'm charged about now is to help people that also feel trapped in their work find meaningful, fulfilling work and have it whatever it is that they choose to be, set their own vision, not a vision of someone else had set for them, not the life that they're unconscious to. Make the decision from a place of deep internal desire, like you had just been sharing.
So,
and explore that.
So how does a person find deep meaning in the work they do? I mean, I have made it I have a degree in philosophy and theology, and I had to do a lot of work to like create the. It's like, it's just But I'm curious on what your sort of template is, or what is your suggestions for people.
I fucking love it. I will tell you this right now. It could come I fully believe it comes from within, right? But it doesn't really matter. Meaning, and I mean this in this one way, if you had an experience in the past, a struggle, a pain, you are emotionally charged up about something, negative or positive, you could use that to define what you want to do next in your life. That's a source of energy that you could use.
So give me an example.
With bodybuilding. How did you decide to be a bodybuilder? You went through something extremely viscerally. You're like, I do not want to be put in this position. No one's gonna make me fall. And by the way, I also happen to love it. Would that have happened otherwise? I don't know.
I think I was in love with what I knew what was coming. Like, it was exciting to me, because I knew these results that this new body was forming. I knew it was going to take years. I literally knew it was going to take me more than a decade for anyone to even recognize what I was trying to do, because I was that small. So I was like, but I didn't care. But I was excited the most about what my labor, my effort was going to produce. I knew it would produce it. It was like a certainty in my head. So when I tell people, like, this is the critical key. Now, in my opinion, as a coach and working with athletes and professional athletes as well as other people, fitness models, man, that's the piece. If you can get that piece, doesn't matter how you get to it. If you can have ultimate belief, this is like, it's the essence of religion. Like, you have to be able to believe without proof. If you can believe in your own future without proof, you'll get there eventually.
And you are one of the lucky ones that had it. When you look at the magazine, and I was so curious when you were sharing that, how the fuck did he believe that he was going to be the guy in the magazine when everyone except for his brother told him that wasn't going to be possible?
Dude, they laughed at me. They literally laughed at me.
So rare. That is nature to me. When I hear that feels like that's nature, because some people fold.
Yes.
I fold. That was me. I was someone that's fold. I played basketball in high school, and I use this example. I had a game where I was like 0 for 12 or 13 from the 3-point arc. I was a decent shooter, so I had a freaking.
So you're like, what's going on?
I was like, I was thinking,
I'm jinxed.
I saw my coach in the hallway the next week, and he's like, "Hey, what's going on, Ofer?"
Oh shit!
So like, that should have been like, "Oh no, you fucking didn't. I'm gonna show you, right?" I'd use that now, but I didn't have that mindset. That wasn't in my either nature or what I had developed as part of my new being. So I didn't take it and use that as fuel. In fact, that actually stuck in my head some of the future games. I wish I had part of your nature went there. I would have been a much better basketball player. If I took that into practice, I was working extra time. I didn't have it.
So this I do recall my brother and I both. My brother has the same attribute as well, where we are both very hard-headed. We're both very stubborn. If we get an idea, we believe something. People used to tell me in school, high school, and college, even my grandmother would tell me, "Tad, you would argue with a fence post." I said, "Yes, if I'm correct, I will." Because I mean, who else? I mean, I am my most credible witness, right?
You wherever you go, there you are.
That's right. It's like, now,
Wherever
I am.
you go, there you go.
I have to say this though, that you have to take, if you're going to take that stance, you also have to take the stance that at any moment I could be wrong.
I love that stance.
I have to. Any
When I'm
moment.
my
Yeah.
best self, I'm coming from that place. When I'm listening to someone, I'm assuming I'm wrong. Because I don't know. I made some guesses when you shared of how you felt. I was wrong about something. I noticed saying, well, it wasn't really that. It was actually, did think I was going to be, like, I'm like, oh yeah, you know what? I was wrong. I'm wrong. I'm wrong. Like, if I assume I'm wrong when I'm listening to someone, I'm a fucking damn good listener. Because I'm just going to keep assuming until I'm
That's a
wrong.
good, I never thought of that way.
Yeah. As a coach, yeah, that's a secret weapon. That's a secret weapon I use, and everyone should use as just any a person.
The question I ask myself when I do this is just to let people know, share a little bit of myself on the inside. When I'm talking to somebody, especially if I'm digging in, I'm trying to dig and I'm trying to find out something, I ask myself, I'm always asking, how do I become this person? So like when I'm talking to you, I'm like, okay, so I'm trying to be as empathetic as possible. And that, from my way of thinking, and you can tell what you think, I feel like I'm the most open to new ideas when I'm trying to, when I try to step out of my own form, my own ego, my own ideas, my own understanding. If I could, it's tough. It is tough, but it's like this is the divine right here, in my opinion. Like I want the downloads, and I have to get out of my own way. I got to get out of my own way. Like get out of my own. Like, okay, now it's like I feel like when we talk to people in this life, like I feel like we are all masters. We're all masters at something. Doesn't matter what it is. We're masters, and that resource is available to us. And it's just a matter of, am I going to put myself in a vibrational stance to be able to extract this from and be able to receive it and allow it into my life and allow it into my own brain so that I can hear it. And so I feel like we're all like panhandlers out there digging for, panning for gold in our conversations. And sometimes we get nice nuggets. Sometimes we just get a little bit of dust, but whatever, man, it's always there. It's always there if we look for it. Most people are just too busy complaining about the fucking dirt to not see, like, look, man, there's gold dust in there. You just have to look for it and listen for it, right? Like, so that's why I'm in conversations. That's what I'm trying to do.
I'll tell you why I'm laughing big time here. Like, you literally just got inside my head how I think a lot of the time.
Oh, really?
Because what I'm hearing from what you're saying is like you are fired up. There's something that fires you up about getting that wisdom, that knowledge, that information, the learning. Like, you are a learner, right? Like that seems like that's part of your DNA right now.
I think that's why that's why we're all here, to learn. Like, that's how we expand. So like, I can't expand, and my job here is to expand. So I'm supposed to become more and more and more until this physical life is over. But I know that's kind of like the job. Like, right?
I love it. And I feel like I'm that way. What I notice is that many people are not that. It's not. My second son, we'll see. I'm like, what's his nature like? He's like, he's a learner he's a doer. He's a doer. Let me go fall off like there and bonk my head, and then I'll like, don't teach me what to do. So we'll see what happens with that. But like, you're interested in, like, you want the nuggets, I want the nuggets. Like, let's open up to us. Let's get out of our own way and really see what we're missing.
When reminds me whenever I go to the library, like, I love going to libraries because like nowadays we have everything on the internet. Like, so we can find, so you don't even, but it's both. That's not nearly as, I think it's exciting to go into a library and hunt for books, because the way I see the library is, this is a place that has literally thousands of years of information, of experiences and information and knowledge that all these motherfuckers aggregated together, and I have access to it for free.
Something interesting. I'm curious about this, Tad. When do you notice you getting your downloads?
When I'm out of myself, when I'm out of my own way. So usually it's right around, like, when I meditate, when I clear my mind, or when I'm writing, Writing is always my best place, man. I put myself, and I even wear my I've been not advertising, but I've been showing people that I got this Neo Rhythm. Have you seen this thing?
Oh, hell no.
Fucking cool. Now I love brain stuff. So this is it's called a Neo Rhythm, and it's made by a company called OmniPem, OMNIPEM. Anyways, it works off of this sort of like a kind of a magnetic resonance. It's some cognitive research they've been doing with this stuff, and it really, really is awesome. So what you do is there's several programs on and it's connected to your phone, just like via Bluetooth. And when you put it on your head, there's two positions here, and there's a position on the back for the back of the brain stem and stuff like that. And essentially, your brain synchronizes to the waves that it will produce. So you can set it for there's a sleep program, so it'll produce delta waves, and you put it under your pillow, or you put it around usually you put it on your pillow if you're sleeping. But I use this to meditate and for other stuff.
Do you just go deeper, theta?
It produces, there's a theta program that's, and you just go, like within minutes. I'm asleep in minutes when this thing's under my pillow. Like, because your brain just, it's like resonance.
Yeah, it's resonance.
You're right. Everything's aligning with the frequencies, and you can feel it. You can literally feel it. It's really cool. And they have a energy and vitality program, and that just, I put that, dude, it's better than coffee. I don't like coffee, but it's better than, put that on in the morning, 5 minutes, and it's like, I'm awake, man. Like, I'm not a morning dude. So, but I really firmly believe that we change our subconscious directly through theta states. We change our biology through theta states. We change our that programming you talked about. That's the and I think it's really ironic that you called it program. That it's the operating system, because the metaphor that I've always used for our unconscious mind is that, look, this is really very much like your brain is the computer. It's like, and your brain uses this operating system. It's what you believe. It's your unconscious mind. That's the operating system of your life. And every time you think a thought, do an action, every time you feel something or experience something, you're literally dropping lines of code into that operating system that is governing your life. And so you better be putting in the right code. If you're watching things are coming into your sensory that don't make you feel good, that stress you out, that upset you, then you're in for some hurt, right? Like it's gonna taint that programming that you have, and if you grow up with it. And I've met people, and I actually do on my transformation programs, because it's an inner and outer change. I work on some of this inner shift stuff, and it's amazing what comes out of people when they find out that what was really holding them back on their changing their bodies or their lives was not the stuff that they thought. It's the stuff that was inside. It's the way that we are in. They don't realize that they're just reacting in these ways, and it's the programming that's making them react that way. And they don't, and they want to change it, but it doesn't happen just by wanting it to change. You got to do more than that, right?
Absolutely. No, that's awesome. That sounds like a freaking powerful program, and going to the source.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Like, because you want to. So I'm curious, like, what kind of when you help like CEOs and different people. Find the value and the fulfillment in their own work. What are the areas that are the most powerful for you to work with them and get where you get the most traction?
I think one of the things that I find that's always the most interesting is just start where you actually start. What's such a people react to this question so differently. Like, what is it that you want? It's such a simple question, yet some people could go like, I know exactly what I want. This is what I love. I want 1, 2, 3, ready to go. And by the way, those are coming from old files. Like, you can only be stretched and know what you want based on how much is in your current belief system and awareness, kind of like what you talked about before. And some people ask the same question and they're like, I have no fucking clue. I wish I knew. I don't know what I want. So bringing that, like exploring from the get-go, because you got to know what you want in order to get. You talked about something. We're going to create no matter what. So we're either going to create from a reactive place or proactive.
That's right.
So some people are just going to create based off of them just continuing to live out old patterns, old beliefs, and taking the same type of action or other action that goes with old.
So to me, that reminds me of like those old video games. Like when I grew up, we play like Asteroids, Pac-Man. Like for instance, Pac-Man. You got the ghosts and you got the Pac-Man, right? Pac-Man, you control him, but the ghosts have a program. They're always running the same patterns. If you figure out those patterns, you'll know where they're going. So that's kind of what people are. That's the way I see it. Like people, essentially, I want to be the guy holding the joystick. I want to be telling my Pac-Man to go eat everything that I wanted to eat. I don't want to run on a program because those ghosts are going to come along the same patterns. They're going to get me every time if I don't adapt my program.
I didn't know that was fucking true.
Oh yeah.
Running on a freaking pattern the whole time.
Yeah, the most successful. There's a great series on Netflix that talk about the history of gaming. Oh, I loved it because all this shit I remember, except for Pong. I remember Pong, but it had already come out, and I was like, I was just a real little kid, but I remember I'm like, oh, they must be rich. They got Pong, man. But it was wonderful because they go through these, like the software programmers and what they did, and then they get to the 80s, right, where the Asteroids and Defender and all these great games that I remember playing. And then they talk about Pac-Man. It was a huge game. If I don't know if you remember, but it was a huge game. They had a song on the radio, had Pac-Man Fever. I remember this like it was yesterday. And they said that, they had these contests and these guys would get, and they said that the problem was that people would figure out the patterns too quickly. And so they would be on these games. So the revenue curve for the arcades, because you're dropping quarters in. Yeah. So like the revenue curve would spike the first couple of weeks, and then it would drop dramatically because everyone would be able to stay on these games because they figured out the patterns. So this group of software guys came up with these kits that they were like software guys. And they said, well, we just do these retro. We'll just fit people we'll design these kits so they could increase the capabilities change the patterns and stuff, so nobody can get the hang of it and make the game more difficult. And they could just sell them to the people, the arcade owners, and install them. And it worked. And they made tons of money doing that. And then they ended up doing their own company. It was a really wonderful series.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was just cool. And they go all the way through to get to like World of Warcraft, like all these games people play now. Like it's way beyond like what I remember playing games.
I didn't know any of that.
Oh yeah, like the first 3D game was Firefox on Nintendo. I think it was the Sega Genesis. And I bought that specifically for that game. My ex-wife and I played that game for like a couple years. It was an awesome game. Yeah. He's a little fox, and he flies this little aircraft, and he's like in space and stuff, and he has a little buddy.
Part of it bringing me back wasn't one that stuck too much.
I just happened to be into like games in college and stuff, and I liked all the simulation games, and I liked all the first-person shooter games when they were in their infancy. I remember like Castle Wolfenstein. That was the first-person shooter. That was the very first one. When that game came out, we were all hooked, man. All me and my buddies, we would go and we would. Some of my buddies used to work at some company, and he's like, "Come on here!" I'm like at night we're gonna play on the network because nobody had networks back then except this big company, right? So we would go to this company and play Doom and play like Castle Wolfenstein.
You're born the wrong generation, man.
Man.
Keep up now,
I'm glad, because if I was born today, I would be playing a video game right now.
Yeah.
I'd be on Twitch, like fucking like recording my video games and shit,
Great way to connect through like the pandemic, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Credit to the gaming.
Well, like they say there's only like a couple industries that are recession proof on the internet these days, and that's like porn and like and games. Porn and games, yeah. What we want is entertainment. We want the dopamine hit. We want it to feel good, and I think that when it comes to behaviors, we govern our lives. It's like our emotions are really this sort of Geiger counter this is the way I see it, that allows us to to move in life. Like it's like we're moving through. It's like we have a GPS system, and it's telling us where to go on the fly, and your emotions are the ones that are those are the signals the GPS gives us. Something that doesn't feel good means move away from it. Something that feels good means move towards it. And these guys, so we can sort of pace our life based on how we feel and what we want. It's just sometimes it gets a little nebulous because we don't always see things for what they really, really are.
Yeah. I mean, that was great, and I love that, especially at the end. Because what I started to think about was, and it doesn't really matter. Honestly, it doesn't matter. But this is something that goes through my head. Is what are the emotions? Because we know that emotions are driving behavior.
Yes.
Right? We're making decisions based off emotional reactions to what you said. You're either moving away from pain or something that doesn't feel good, or moving towards whatever feels good or has that kind of So it's an energy game too, right? There's this.
That's right. Exactly what it is.
It's an energy game. It's an energetics game.
I tell people this, look, we're all energy. This is it.
We're all energy.
That's it.
We're a machine. Machines processing energy
right.
fuel, and then it goes into our mind reactively, and we make decisions. So if we're going to start with, like you said, a conscious, proactive decision, how do you, if you haven't used that muscle, if you haven't developed that skill, start to get access to what it is that you want? Like this is the work. This is, I think, a really fun and fulfilling work, because then you could be like, oh shit, I have just actually been making decisions based off of energy that I wasn't even aware of in my body. I'm not even aware of it, based off of old things that have happened, or based off something that I heard from my parents or my teachers, and I'm not actually really even running my own show here. So like, it's really freeing when you actually can make a full choice for yourself, from a place of letting go of all the other expectations, like you said before, and just saying like, Jesus, man, what do I actually fucking really want? You know what? And then when you actually let yourself play and you get rid of all the noise, that's why that thing that you have is so freaking cool, because you could really let go of the noise.
Well, I'm in love with it, but I'm also I'm really big into. So I take a lot of supplements that are brain supplements too, like to encourage like blood flow, or to encourage just memory or cognitive abilities.
I want to ask you about one of them.
Go ahead.
When I met here, I got to remember what it's called. I think it was like level. We can do it offline also, but something like level, it was a strap. And I was like, man, it sounded like he was like, it's way better than coffee. It's worked for me. I was like, I'm not going to try this.
I'll have to check it out.
I wrote it down. I'm going to ask you about it now that this is your world.
Yeah, I mean, so it's interesting. Like, when you said, I find it fascinating that you said that you found it amazing that I knew what I wanted. This is it, and then you said that there are a lot of people that just don't, right?
Yeah.
And I find this. By the way, this has been a question of mine my entire life, because I don't have a memory of my life, not of me not knowing exactly what I wanted.
Wow. I
mean, I've always precisely known. Even when I was a kid and I would go see Star Wars, and my mom, and it would be our birthday, and my mother would say, "What do you want for your birthday?" My brother and I would produce lists, very specific lists. Here's where you can get this. But when it came to like my job, like my careers, even if I changed my mind later, no matter what stage I was ever in my life, I've always known very precisely what I was going after. I believe, and this is as a coach, I tell this to my clients. I don't believe that you can get somewhere that you don't know where you're going.
Yeah.
You have to be able to. It's got to be really clear in your head.
I think you could get there. I think you get there, but you might take this. You might get there twice.
Well, I guess.
Time.
Yeah, and part of it is that I think that you have to be able to recognize it, and a lot of it comes from my work with people. So like over and over and over for years and years, as I've coached people through weight loss or through competitions or whatever, especially through weight loss, like normal people, athletes tend to not have this same thing going on, but they do a little bit. But normal people, when they're trying to change their bodies, I mean, they're getting healthy, they're losing weight or whatever they're doing, and we're making progress. But the progress is not going to be super, super fast. It's going to be like take off a pound a week or a couple of pounds a week or whatever. And then sooner or later down the road, it becomes extremely visible, right? Like really, really easy to recognize this person's. Yeah, but during the process, a lot of people, they just get they get diffused. And so what I often tell them, like, look, how do you know? Like, because what I don't want to hear from people is, I'll say, what are your goals? Let's see, so I can direct the program. And they'll say, I want to lose 50 pounds. Do you think that's realistic? And I always tell, like, it doesn't matter what I believe. It only matters what you believe. But if you're asking me from a historical standpoint, it's completely possible. Completely, if that's what you want, it's completely possible. All they're really looking for with that question, by the way, is validation. They want me to give them the okay that is an okay dream to have. And I'm like, I'm like, Damon, you get to decide.
This is the conditioning. You just nailed it on the head, right? That's the empty door that I see people walking to. That's what I experience as well. we're all looking for someone else to give us permission on what we should do. And
I think it has to do with the tribal nature that we are. Because when you go back prehistorically, we survived because we had consensus. You and I were part of the same tribe, and we're off hunting and stuff like that. We needed to make sure that you and I worked together clearly. We needed to make sure that, but more importantly, we also need to make sure that everyone's fed, everyone's healthy, everyone's safe. Can't really do that if everyone's not flying on the same page. It's harder. It's a
great point. Like, and it doesn't have to be so polar.
Right.
You could have the consensus and use that, but when it's time to make a big shift in your life and do something that's personal and meaningful and that matters, how do you actually start leveraging these other skill set that, hey, I got to do this for me, and this matters to me because X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to keep moving forward.
That is by the way, I think it's interesting that you bring that up, because the goals for the self that we here in North America think are that's the holy grail. Like, that's what we all should be focused towards. It's new. That's a new phenomenon. Historically, humans think in terms of the group.
The company.
The group. It's the group, man. It's your tribe. It's like, you don't survive if you don't think as a group. If you think as an individual, you're dead.
And who? So I don't want to get so conspiracy, right? Because I think that's biology too. But like, unchecked, those messages are coming in from somewhere too, right? Like, you got to be loyal to the group. By the way, I'm a team guy, and like I associate. I love team. Like, I love team sports. But when unchecked, and that could be manipulated. That can really be manipulated to influence behavior, right? Because if the person making the decision is a person in power saying, hey, you got to be a loyal person, and they're doing it for their own best interests, then you just take on that belief.
Right.
You take it, and then you
but when you think about it, this makes a lot of sense if you live tribally. So if you live tribally, everyone pretty much needs to share the same sensibilities. If you don't, then there's too much conflict. And so, like, let's say you have two groups. Maybe they're competing for the same resources. So it would be like I could easily dream up a million scenarios where one group goes and steal the other person's things, or they go and they take advantage of them, because the advantage is that the group itself. I read this in an anthropology research project, and they were talking about what characteristics made certain groups in animal kingdom and whatever cultures the most successful. What was the attributes that made bar none, number one on the list? Can you guess what the number one thing on the list was that made every group that had this attribute in spades always came out as the victors, as the winners, so to speak, as the ones with all the resources? Collaboration.
The group being able
the group that had the highest degree of collaboration from within and outside of themselves had the most success. Period. Yeah. Hands down. Hands down. Yeah. Tigers and lions and bears could kill us, but they don't have collaboration, and so we as a group can easily overcome them. That's why we're the dominant species, right? Because we have ways of collaborating there's strength in numbers. That's why gangs are formed in inner cities, because there is strength in numbers. I get it. And countries are the same way. I think we're operating under the same paradigm as we always have. We just put different names on it. Things have different bells and whistles. We say different things to ourselves about them to make ourselves feel better about it. But at the end of the day, it's still relatively very, very still similar to the way we kind of lived, just with a lot more rules and a lot more,
The machinery is the same.
The scenery is the same. We're just putting different window dressing on it.
Frameworks and things to look at coming into our world. I'm not going to use the saber-toothed tiger thing. I think that's been overkilled. Like,
what's that?
Everyone kind of goes back, if you're reading the books or something or watching a video, they're like, we used to be afraid of saber-toothed tigers. Now we're afraid of, something else. I just kind of
now we're afraid of viruses that don't kill people.
I'm not going there.
No, I just. We live in a very strange world. I think you and I are seeing this in spades because we also can remember a world where we didn't have the dissemination of information so fast. We didn't have what we now call fake news, or essentially just people. My opinion of what is called fake news is really just hearsay. It's the way that the common vernacular people have always talked about politics. There's no basis in reality to it. It's just the way they understand it, which is flawed. And yet now some of those opinions are making it to the news because we have a 24-hour news cycle, and there's not 24 hours of news. We simply don't need it. We don't need it. I don't need the commentary, by the way. It's not a fucking basketball game. I don't need the commentary.
We're so, like, I'm just speaking about myself in this one moment, but it's really for the broader thing. We're so plastic. We're so affected and swayed by what comes in through our world. When I started watching the news a couple of years ago, I was like emotionally furious. I was angry. I didn't know why, but I was like, something's happening. I don't like it. I stopped watching it. I stopped watching the news.
I stopped watching in the late 90s.
No, you didn't.
Because I was watching it every day. I watched it. I was like, I don't feel good when I turn this off.
Dude,
I'm like,
it's powerful. Right?
Well, and then I started to take a survey of all the news stories. And I'm like, okay, well, how many good stories do I see versus how many bad stories with bad outcomes? And it's like 7-1.
We have a negativity.
I'm like, this is no value for me.
Yeah, it's just playing onto the machinery. They're smart. They fucking get the psychology. They excel because we're prone to watch it. Like, it's just a game,
Well, you really want to get into it. You can start looking at how the application developers design the user interfaces and the way these applications work and devices work to incentivize us to use them in very, very addicting ways. And it's truly the same chemical process in our brains as addiction. So, and we know this. We know, and the ramifications are not good. Right? They're not really that good.
Bringing in ethics and morals. See, what you've developed and what your passions in and how much research you're putting in it and the way you understand this stuff on next level is what it probably see, this is another assumption, what makes you such a effective and powerful coach. And again, I use powerful in the way that is in a positive way, because you can help someone learn this for themselves and use it to help them get to where they want to go. You just use what we know and have it create some systems and processes and use behavior in a way that they can make it repeatable and consistent.
Yeah, I think, it's really, I do find it interesting that out of 7.5 billion people on this, or trillion people? Billion people on this planet, right? 7.5 billion people, that there are 7.5 billion unique perspectives on it. And it is ludicrous for me to think that I'm going to get consensus with most of them.
Oh, man.
So I, especially when it comes to their opinion about me. So what I tell myself is, like, I used to care so much, because when you're in a sport like bodybuilding, it's like it almost cultivates this caring, because you're judged against other competitors. Man.
So like there's judgment in
it's in and out, it's everywhere. You go work out and you use mirrors because you're judging yourself. You're like, and then I grow up in the sport, I compete, I do all my thing, and then I become a judge. So it's like a really interesting. So people, the athletes that get my credit, because when I judge a show, I'm a pro judge, so I judge pro shows and amateur shows, and when I'll get emails for feedback after the show, and that's common procedure for most of the shows, and most athletes want to know from judges' perspectives what they can improve on and stuff. So that I always give a nice detailed list of what I saw. So I always give people what good stuff and what I think they need to improve, and I think it's essential to give both, because nobody's doing everything. Because if you give somebody just comments on what they have to improve, it can come across, even though they know logically this isn't the case, it can make the insinuation to them that there's nothing good going on with their physique, or they're not doing anything good. And I always want to make sure that no, that's never the case. If you're breathing oxygen on this planet and you're doing something towards in making some attempt, then something good is going on. You just have to find it.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's interesting. You're talking about, we're always evolving in some way, and then how do you give feedback in a way that's going to be constructive, in a way they could hear it so they could use it to get to their goals. And that's a delicate game. I didn't know that in the bodybuilding world, but
it's ironic, because the way my approach is very different than most, than all the other coaches that I know of in the industry, and I'm one of the top coaches. And because I work from this inner piece and the outer piece, so I'm going both directions, because I just know that our brains control the machine. Like we initiate, like there's a consciousness, there's an awareness that's built within our consciousness. And I see that as the real me. The real me doesn't think. The real me doesn't really. I mean, I have a body in this life, but it's a machine. It's what I get to use, right? It's the tool that I get to use, and to express all that I think I've come here to express. And it's just temporary. Like that's why I tell people this. Like, and I think some people take it the wrong way when I say this, but because my stepfather passed away last year, and I loved him. He was wonderful. The only father figure that I ever really knew. But I didn't. But I was not. I've never been super sad about death. Not really. And it's because I don't see it as like there's nothing that's really, really bad here. I mean, yes, I don't get to interact with that person physically anymore, but man, I've interacted with my grandmother on an energetic level, on an emotional level, and she's been dead for years, for 30 some odd years, and same thing with my grandfather. So I don't need their physical bodies to interact with the love or with the understanding or with, just those pieces. I wrote a really great article about, because I really truly believe that we also, this goes into some of my philosophy. We also that we are connected to our geographical and geological pasts. So in other words, my genealogy, I'm connected to all those people and the geographies that they came from. I know I am. I could feel my Hawaiian because I'm Aboriginal Hawaiian as well as Japanese. So and then my mother's side of me is European, like British. I'm mostly British and German and Irish and Portuguese. So the things that people think I am, I always joke around this. I'm not. Like I'm not Italian and I'm not Greek and I'm not Hispanic. And these are the things that people historically think that I am. I'm just none of these things. I do happen to be a little bit. I think I'm like 2% Jewish, somewhere back there. I did my DNA thing, so I thought it was kind of cool. I just think it's cool. But yeah. So but I think that for me at least, we have to use like our emotional states like guide us through our life, and that's how we sort of and everyone's perspective is colored so differently. I just think it's kind of crazy to ever believe that we can get a kind of consensus with our ideas, and then to hold someone and then to hold it against somebody. This is the most. I don't know about you, but for me, this is the most unusual time because I didn't think that we would get to a point in our political discussions where people just want to attack each other.
It's a one big identity game. Honestly, this is just one big identity game where when you get so tied up to what you believe you are, what you see yourself as, and there's labels around that, and there's constructs and context around that, then when someone attacks that label or that what you see yourself as, they're attacking you, and your natural reaction is to defend itself in whatever fight or freeze way it's going to do that. So yeah, it's a belief.
When in reality they're just expressing a belief that is probably not fully formed about the person that is, or completely accurate, or maybe it is, and the other person just doesn't like what they hear.
Well, I don't even know what's accurate sometimes. I only know it from my perspective. You talk about perspectives, and you're right. Like, this is just the world I get to live and see my eyes through. But
it reminds me of the Matrix, right? Like, we're in the Matrix, man. Except the Matrix is really
gonna swallow. Yeah, man. No, this is a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed going. You're on another level, man. It's been really fun to listen to you, and I'm glad we got to connect. This has been.
Yeah, me too. Well, tell everybody how they can get a hold of you and reach you and that kind of stuff first.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you can feel free to reach me on social media. It's at adameskow.com on just the main channels, and same with my website, www.adameskow.com. And you already mentioned the podcast, so.
Yeah, you have the Unspoken Agreements, right?
Yep.
Now, I really like that title. It's an awesome title for a podcast, by the way. What does it mean to you?
I think we mentioned it was kind of the undertone of this whole conversation. It's like, what are the things that's driving your life? What are those beliefs? What are those agreements that you made that you weren't aware of? And I mean agreements like you took on all these beliefs, you're living the life that you are living, but you don't really want it. And how do you start becoming aware of what else is out there for yourself, and becoming aware of what's driving your behavior, your thoughts, your decision making, and then how can you become more free by doing things that you really want to do on a deep core level,
Is
on
that
a soul level.
have you found that to be on a range of difficulty? How difficult is that actually to change somebody's some of those beliefs, in your opinion, from your experience?
It's funny because the way to change that is accepting a new belief, that beliefs really are decisions. Like and this is, again, my personal belief, right? But this is what I'm choosing because I see the power in this. I have now challenged and changed my beliefs, and I realized the only thing that was different was I accepted and held on one that I was unawarely choosing to accept, versus now redefining, looking at my life and say, well, what is it that feels right? Tapping into my body and really searching on how is it that I want to live? What are the beliefs that I want to have in that person that I want to be? So who do I want to be? What beliefs do I want to have in order to be that person? And it constantly evolves.
I've been under the impression that the reason why most people have the problems that they do in terms of insecurity, in terms of understanding their world and themselves, is because they don't really know who they are. That we were born into this life, but we're not given a handbook. Life is our handbook. Experience is our handbook, right? And even our own parents oftentimes don't know who they are when they're there to they're there to help us discover who we are. And what I mean by that, this is what I mean. Is like, you can know your name, you can know what you do, you can know what you like, and you can know what you feel. But who are you really? Like, those are part of the machine. Those are our responses, but you're not the machine. Like, unless you believe that you are, like, that's okay if a person believes this is who I am. Like, that's acceptable. I personally don't believe that. I think there's more to this. I can feel it within me. And I've had 2 near-death experiences where I should be dead. I literally should be dead, and I'm not. And I came out of those experiences going with a strong sense that my purpose was not fulfilled. And I can't tell you that any other stronger way than that. Like, about 5 years ago, I had a near-death experience where I was like, I should be dead, and I'm like, and it was because of my own doing. I was wanting to, like, end this life, and I was like, but I came through it, and I'm like, I'm glad that I did. But it really, man, it's hard to really give you the sense of decisiveness and power and strength in my heart that I felt coming through that, because I felt so damaged prior. I felt so hurt prior, and then coming through that, feeling like, oh my God, like, I have purpose here. Yeah. And it's just an awakening that you have that I think so I really believe this.
Massive gift to be able to feel that, to experience that. You could live in a way that's deeply purposeful and meaning to you. That's a different way of life. It's one that, by the way, people could be going on living life, believing what they want. It might be working for them. Right. It's not for me to tell them it's not. And
no,
I don't feel that way for myself. Like, if it works for you, fucking great.
Go for it.
For the people that's not working for, like, let's explore.
Well, I used to say this when I was in college, and I still stand by it today, that there's 3 things you should always question in this life. No matter what age you are, no matter where you are, what station you are in your life, you should always question your parents, question your religion, and question your government. Like, if you don't question these things, man, these are the things that govern your life. These are where we get most of our messages. Question them. And I don't mean question for the sake of being critical. I mean question for the sake of understanding, for your best benefit, what will support your well-being the most. Because if I have a belief that doesn't support my well-being, I drop it. I get rid of it. It's not worth it.
Yeah, that's a huge, like, that's a skill. That's everything. That's a gift. That's a skill. Like, that's massive. If you could get to that point,
I think for me, it's a process. It's just something that we, because I don't think some things are hard to drop. Like, we want to hold on to we instinctively want to hold on to our baggage. Like, the most powerful story, like some of the most powerful stories that spoke to me when I was in seminary were these first century Palestinian stories of like the Good Samaritan and different things of that nature in the Judeo-Christian texts. And there was one particular one that talks about, it's a famous one, it talks about the eye of the needle. They talk about, what's the saying? It says, it is easier for a it's easier for a wealthy man to go through to pass through the eye of a needle than it is to get into the kingdom of heaven. And essentially what they're saying is that the rich man, the wealthy man, the merchant has a lot of baggage, he's got a lot of wealth, and he can't take these things through because first century Palestine, the eye of a needle was the entrance to a city. And it was about 5 feet tall, and you had to get permission from the gatekeepers, the centurions. And if they thought you were okay, then they let the gates open, and then the merchant would get off his camel. He would unload all of his stuff that he was going to sell off of his camels. He might have had 10 or 12 camels, and then he had to get each camel to get on its knees and crawl through that fucking door. And that took a couple of hours, and it was painful, and nobody wanted to do it, and everybody thought it sucked. But that's how it was a very, very high level of difficulty. And so that's what that little passage is talking about, is this difficulty that you can't enter into this place that you want to go. And I call it your new reality, the kingdom of heaven, your new identity, whatever it is. You can't get there carrying your old baggage. You have to let it all go. And that is hard for us to do. It's scary. It's scary.
We're attached, we're scared, it's wrapped up in them. Yeah.
Because we think that's who we are. Because what we're holding on to, we think that's who we are. So if we drop it, who do we become then? You
just nailed it. You just nailed it, and that's what limits us from going to.
That's right.
Place we want to go. It's the same exact thing.
I see it. That little scenario that I just described plays itself out over and over and over and over and over again, almost in probably 50%, 60% of my body transformation people. They're maybe morbidly obese, and they've been that way, and it's all from emotional stuff.
Yeah.
It's not because it's not like they're horrible people. They're not. No. It just has to do with a lot of other stuff that's affecting their body, and they haven't let go of old ideas, and more importantly, they don't believe they're worthy. They haven't given themselves permission to say, I am worthy of something better than this.
Yeah.
So they live out the old paradigm over and over and over and over.
That is so powerful. That's so powerful. I feel like I want to run through a wall right now.
Well, hey, Adam, thank you so much for spending the time and taking your time today to be on my show, man. I'll have you back. I liked our conversation. This is the kind of stuff that I could talk about for hours.
Yeah, it comes off supernatural. This was a ton of fun. It flew by, and I just really appreciate you having me on. This was great.
My pleasure, man. Hang on after I stop the recording, but thank you again, Adam, for being on the show. I'll have you on again in the future for sure.
Sounds good.
Handle your high with Tadeusz.